My 7-year-old son stood in our kitchen, tugging on my scrub top, his voice barely a whisper. "Mommy, when you're at the hospital at night, Daddy brings a lady home. She smells like flowers, and she stays in your bedroom." In that moment, with dish soap still on my hands, I felt my 12-year marriage shatter. What I didn't know yet was that the lady was my best friend, my neighbor, the woman I cried to every Thursday morning over coffee. And my husband had trained our son to lie for him. My name is Jessica Morgan. I'm a nurse, a mother, and, as of 6 months ago, a divorced woman who chose public revenge over private suffering. This is the story of how betrayal nearly destroyed me, and how I chose to destroy them back. But first, let me take you back to the beginning, to show you how love can blind you so completely that you miss what a child sees clearly. I met Brandon Morgan in 2013 at a charity run in downtown Austin. I was 28, a newly certified nurse at St. David's Medical Center, and he was 30, a confident marketing director with a smile that made my stomach flip. He wore a faded University of Texas Longhorns t-shirt and had just finished the 10K while I was struggling through my first 5K. He waited at the finish line with a bottle of water and that devastating smile. "You made it," he said, like I'd accomplished something incredible. That's what Brandon did best in those early days. He made me feel like everything I did mattered. Within 3 months, we were inseparable. Within 6 months, I'd moved into his apartment in Pflugerville. Our wedding in 2014 was small, intimate, exactly what I wanted. We got married at the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center, surrounded by bluebonnets and family. My mother cried through the entire ceremony. Brandon's vows were perfect. He promised to be my partner, my best friend, the father of our future children. I remember thinking, as I stood there in my simple lace dress, that I was the luckiest woman alive. The reception was at a small BBQ joint we loved, Franklin barbecue catered, country music playing, mason jars filled with wildflowers on every table. We danced to George Strait under string lights as the sun set over the Texas hill country. I felt safe. I felt chosen. I felt like I'd finally found home. The first 5 years were good. We bought our house in 2016, a 3-bedroom ranch-style home in a family neighborhood where kids rode bikes in cul-de-sacs and neighbors knew each other's names. Brandon got promoted to senior marketing director. I worked my way up to charge nurse in the emergency department. We talked about starting a family. We planned weekend trips to Fredericksburg for wine tasting, spent Sunday mornings at the farmer's market, had friends over for backyard barbecues. From the outside, we looked like the American dream. Young, successful, in love. Instagram perfect with our matching hook 'em horns gear at UT football games. But here's what I've learned about perfect pictures. They only show you what's in the frame, never what's just outside it. Ethan was born in January 2018, and everything shifted. Not in the ways the parenting books warned me about, the sleepless nights, the touched-out exhaustion, the loss of spontaneity. Those things I expected. What I didn't expect was how Brandon seemed to retreat. Not dramatically, not in ways I could point to and say, "This is wrong." He still showed up to pediatrician appointments. He still posted proud dad photos on Facebook. But there was a distance I couldn't name, a coldness in his eyes when he looked at me nursing Ethan at 3 a.m. "You're always so tired now," he'd say, like my exhaustion was a personal failing, not the inevitable result of keeping a tiny human alive. I told myself it was normal. New parent adjustment. Things would get better when Ethan slept through the night. When Ethan turned 2, I went back to work full-time. The emergency department needed experienced nurses, and the night shift differential meant an extra $8,000 a year. Brandon encouraged it. "We could use the money," he said, "and I can handle bedtime 3 nights a week. It's fine." I remember feeling guilty but also grateful. Grateful he was supportive. Grateful we could build our savings. Grateful I could return to work I loved. So I took the night shifts, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. I'd kiss Ethan goodnight at 6:30, drive 20 minutes to the hospital, and spend 12 hours dealing with heart attacks, car accidents, overdoses. Then I'd drive home at dawn, exhausted, and slip into bed while Brandon got Ethan ready for daycare. It felt like we were a team, a tired, tag-team parenting couple doing our best. I had no idea what those night shifts really meant. No idea that my absence had become someone's opportunity. In 2023, Vanessa and her family moved into the house next door. She had 2 kids, a daughter Ethan's age and a younger son. Her husband, Mark, worked in tech and traveled constantly. Vanessa was a stay-at-home mom, always perfectly put together even at 7 a.m. drop-off, with her yoga pants and messy bun that somehow looked intentional. She brought over brownies the day they moved in. "I'm so glad to finally have neighbors with kids the same age," she said, her smile warm and genuine. We exchanged numbers. Within a week, our kids were having play dates. Within a month, Vanessa and I were having Thursday morning coffee in her kitchen while the kids played. She became my friend, my confidant. The person I texted when Ethan got his first A at school, when I had a rough shift at work, when Brandon and I fought about whose turn it was to do bath time. I told Vanessa everything. How Brandon seemed distant lately. How our sex life had become perfunctory, obligatory. How I felt like I was drowning between work and motherhood and trying to keep our marriage alive. "All marriages go through rough patches," she'd say, squeezing my hand across her granite countertop. "Mark and I barely talk anymore with his travel schedule. You and Brandon will figure it out." Her lavender perfume would fill the kitchen, something expensive from Sephora, she told me once. I found it comforting. She found me comforting. We were two suburban moms trying to survive the beautiful, exhausting chaos of it all. I trusted her completely. I never questioned why she always had time for coffee on my mornings off. I never wondered why she asked so many questions about Brandon. I never thought to ask myself, why is my neighbor so interested in my marriage problems? The first real crack appeared 3 months ago, in July, right after the 4th of July weekend. Ethan started acting strange, clingy, quiet. He'd wake up with nightmares and crawl into our bed, something he hadn't done in over a year. "Did something happen at school?" I asked him one morning over Cheerios. He shook his head, staring at his bowl. "Did someone say something mean to you?" Another head shake. "Baby, you can tell Mommy anything." He looked up at me with those huge brown eyes and opened his mouth like he wanted to say something. Then Brandon walked into the kitchen, and Ethan's face changed. Closed off. "Nothing's wrong, Mommy," he said quickly, going back to his cereal. I looked at Brandon. He shrugged. He's probably just tired from summer camp. But something in Ethan's reaction bothered me. The way he'd shut down the moment his father entered the room. I filed it away in the back of my mind, a small worry I told myself I was overreacting about. 2 weeks later, I was loading the dishwasher after dinner when Ethan came up behind me. Brandon had gone to run to Home Depot real quick for something he needed for the garage. Ethan tugged on my scrub top. "Mommy?" His voice was small, uncertain. I turned around and crouched down to his level. "What's up, buddy?" He glanced toward the door, checking if his father was really gone, then leaned in close to my ear. What he whispered made my blood turn to ice. "Mommy, when you're at the hospital at night, Daddy brings a lady home. She smells like flowers and she stays in your bedroom." My heart stopped. My hands were still wet from the dishes, soap bubbles dripping onto the kitchen floor. I forced my face to stay calm, neutral, even as panic flooded my system. "What lady, sweetheart?" I asked, my voice somehow steady. "I don't know her name," Ethan said. "But Daddy says she's a surprise for you and I can't tell you about her, or it will make you sad." "But Mommy," his little face crumpled. "I think the lady makes you sad, not happy. Is Daddy lying?" I held Ethan close, my mind racing, my heart shattering into 1,000 pieces. A woman, coming into our house, into our bedroom. While I was saving lives at the hospital, someone was sleeping in my bed, using my bathroom, maybe wearing my robe. And Brandon had weaponized our 7-year-old son's innocence to keep his secret. "Daddy's not lying, baby," I heard myself say, the words tasting like poison. "It's probably a surprise. But you know what? You can always tell Mommy anything, okay? Even surprises. You won't make me sad, I promise." Ethan nodded, relief washing over his face. He hugged me tighter. "I love you, Mommy. I love you too, baby. So much." He ran off to play with his Legos. I stood alone in the kitchen, soap still on my hands, and felt my entire world tilt sideways. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just stood there, gripping the counter, trying to breathe, trying to think. Who was she? How long had this been happening? And the question that made me want to vomit. Did Ethan know her? That night, after Ethan was asleep, I lay in bed next to Brandon. He was scrolling through his phone, the blue light illuminating his face. The face I'd kissed at the altar. The face I'd watched in labor, crying as Ethan was born. The face of a stranger. "Brandon?" I said, testing him. "Yeah?" He didn't look up. "Do you still love me?" Now he looked, confused, maybe irritated. "What kind of question is that?" "I'm serious. Do you still love me? Are you happy?" He put his phone down, sighing like I was being dramatic. Jess, I'm exhausted. It's been a long day. Can we not do this right now? I'm just asking if you're happy in our marriage. Of course I am. Why are you being weird? He turned away from me, pulling the covers up. Good night, Jess. Within minutes, he was snoring. I stared at the ceiling in the dark, my son's whispered words playing on repeat. The woman who smells like flowers. The surprise that would make me sad. Brandon's easy lie. Of course I am. And then I knew. I knew with a certainty that made my whole body go numb. The flowers. Vanessa always smelled like lavender. Expensive lavender perfume from Sephora. The same smell I'd noticed on Brandon's shirts lately. The smell I'd convinced myself was from his new fabric softener. I got out of bed at 2 a.m. and went into the bathroom. I sat on the cold tile floor and finally let myself cry. My hand pressed over my mouth so I wouldn't wake anyone. My best friend, my neighbor, the woman I'd trusted with my marriage problems, my fears, my vulnerabilities. She hadn't been collecting my secrets to support me. She'd been collecting them to sleep with my husband, and Brandon had used our son, our innocent, 7-year-old son, as his alibi, his cover, his accomplice. In that moment, sitting on the bathroom floor of the house we'd bought together, I realized I didn't know the man sleeping in my bed at all, and I had no idea what I was about to discover. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. My hands shook as I texted my charge nurse. Migraine. Can't come in tonight. Brandon looked surprised when he came downstairs and found me still in my pajamas. You're not working? He asked, pouring coffee like it was just another Tuesday. I don't feel well, I said, watching his face carefully. Nothing. No guilt, no panic, no tell. Just mild concern. You should rest then, he said, kissing my forehead like he always did. His lips felt like ice against my skin. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab him by the shirt and demand the truth. Instead, I smiled weakly and said, Yeah, I will. He left for work at 8:30. Ethan left for summer camp at 9. And I was alone in our house, a house that suddenly felt contaminated, violated, foreign. I started in our bedroom. I didn't even know what I was looking for at first. Evidence? Proof? Some sign that would make Ethan's words make sense or prove them wrong? I went through Brandon's dresser drawers with methodical precision. Socks, underwear, t-shirts, gym clothes. Everything normal, too normal. I checked jacket pockets, finding receipts from places I recognized. Hebe grocery store, Shell gas station, Torchy's tacos. Nothing suspicious. His nightstand drawer held the usual: chargers, chapstick, a book he'd been reading for 6 months. I sat on the edge of our bed, the bed where we'd conceived Ethan, where we'd had lazy Sunday mornings, where apparently someone else had been sleeping and felt foolish. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe Ethan had confused something. Kids get things mixed up all the time. Then I checked the laundry hamper. Brandon's work shirts from last week, waiting to be washed. I picked up a blue button-down, the one he'd worn on Thursday, and brought it to my nose. Lavender. Strong, unmistakable lavender perfume. Not faint, like he'd hugged someone goodbye. Saturated, like someone had worn that shirt, or pressed against him for hours. My stomach turned. I grabbed another shirt. Same smell. And another. Every single shirt from the past 2 weeks carried that scent. Vanessa's scent. The smell I'd found comforting in her kitchen was now making me want to vomit in mine. I dropped the shirts back into the hamper and backed away like they were contaminated. This was real. This wasn't my imagination or postpartum anxiety or work stress. My husband was bringing another woman into our home, into our bed, and that woman was my friend. I went to Ethan's room next. His room was typical 7-year-old chaos. Lego sets, Pokemon cards, drawings scattered on his desk. I started looking through the drawings. Most were the usual: stick figures of our family, dinosaurs, spaceships. Then I found one that made my blood run cold. It was dated 3 weeks ago, drawn in crayon. My family was written across the top in Ethan's careful handwriting. There was me in my blue nurse scrubs. There was Ethan in the middle. There was Brandon. And next to Brandon, holding his hand, was another stick figure. A woman with yellow hair and a purple dress. At the bottom, in Ethan's writing, Daddy's friend who visits. I stood in my son's room, holding this drawing, and felt something inside me break. Not my heart. That had already broken. This was something deeper. I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. I drove to Best Buy and bought a nanny cam, one of those teddy bears with a hidden camera inside. It cost $89. I paid cash. Back home, I set up the camera in our bedroom. I tucked the teddy bear on the shelf across from our bed, angled perfectly to capture everything. The camera connected to an app on my phone, recording continuously. I tested it, watching myself on my phone screen, standing in my own bedroom, setting a trap for my own husband. The absurdity wasn't lost on me. 3 months ago, I'd been complaining to Vanessa about Brandon leaving wet towels on the floor. Now I was installing surveillance equipment to catch him cheating. That afternoon, I picked up Ethan from camp like nothing was wrong. "How was your day, buddy?" I asked. "Good. We played sharks and minnows." I wanted to ask him more about Daddy's friend, but I couldn't use my 7-year-old as an informant. Instead, I took him to Amy's Ice Cream and let him get a cone with extra gummy bears. We sat outside in the Texas heat, and I watched him eat ice cream with pure joy on his face, completely unaware that his mother's world was imploding. Brandon came home at 6:30, same as always. "Feeling better?" he asked. "A little," I lied. "We had dinner, leftover chicken fajitas. We watched Ethan play in the backyard. We did dishes together, moving around each other in the familiar dance of a 12-year marriage. He told me about a new client at work. I told him about a patient who sent a thank you card. We sounded like a normal couple. We looked like a normal couple. But I kept thinking about the teddy bear camera upstairs, recording our empty bedroom, waiting. Sunday came. I got ready for my shift like I always did. Scrubs, hair in a ponytail, coffee in a travel mug. I kissed Ethan goodbye. I kissed Brandon. His lips felt like a stranger's. "See you in the morning," he said. "Love you." "Love you too," I said automatically. I walked to my car, got in, and sat there for a moment. My phone was in my hand, the nanny cam app already open. The bedroom was empty on the screen. I drove toward the hospital, my heart pounding. I didn't know what I would find when I checked that footage. My shift that night was hell. I couldn't focus. I nearly gave a patient the wrong medication dosage. Caught it just in time. "You okay, Jess?" my colleague Maria asked around 11 p.m. "You seem off." "Just tired," I said. I haven't been sleeping well. But what I was thinking was, I wonder if she's there right now. I wonder if they're in my bed. I wonder if Ethan is asleep downstairs, unaware. At 9:30 p.m., during my break, I couldn't take it anymore. I went to the parking garage, sat in my car, and opened the nanny cam app. The bedroom was dark, but the camera had night vision. I could see everything in grainy green. The bed was empty. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe tonight was different. Then the bedroom light turned on. Brandon walked in. He wasn't alone. A woman followed him. Blonde hair, purple dress. The same woman from Ethan's drawing. She was laughing at something he said. He closed the bedroom door behind them. I watched, paralyzed, as my husband kissed another woman in our bedroom. I should have looked away. I should have turned off the phone. But I couldn't move. I watched them for 30 seconds that felt like hours. And then the camera angle shifted slightly, and I saw her face clearly for the first time. Vanessa, my neighbor, my friend, the woman who'd held my hand 2 weeks ago when I cried about feeling disconnected from Brandon. She was in my house, in my bed, with my husband. While I saved lives 20 minutes away, she was destroying mine. I turned off the phone. I sat in that dark parking garage and screamed. Not loud. Just a low, guttural sound that came from somewhere deep inside me. Then I wiped my face, walked back inside the hospital, and finished my shift. I drove home at 7 a.m. Monday morning with the video evidence on my phone. The bedroom was empty when I walked in. Brandon was downstairs making coffee, already showered and dressed for work. "How was your shift?" he asked, handing me a mug. "Busy," I said, taking the coffee. My hands were steady. My voice was steady. Everything about me appeared steady. Inside, I was screaming. "Ethan's still asleep," Brandon said. "I should probably wake him up soon for camp." "Brandon," I said. He looked at me. "Yeah?" I opened my mouth to confront him, to show him the video, to burn everything down right there in our kitchen. But then I heard Ethan's footsteps upstairs, and I stopped. Not yet. Not like this. Not until I had a plan. Brandon kissed my forehead, grabbed his laptop bag, and left for work. I stood alone in the kitchen, the video evidence on my phone, my son coming downstairs for breakfast, and a question I couldn't answer. How do you confront the man you thought you knew when you realize you never knew him at all? But that video wasn't the last piece of the puzzle. 3 days later, I found something that made everything so much worse. Because betrayal, I learned, has layers. And I was about to discover just how deep this one went. Teen or nah. For 3 days, I carried that video in my phone like a bomb in my pocket. I went through the motions of normal life, packed Ethan's lunch, kissed Brandon goodbye, smiled at neighbors, while internally, I was disintegrating. Every time Brandon touched me, I felt my skin crawl. Every time Vanessa waved from her driveway, I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I stayed silent. I stayed observant, because I needed to know everything before I acted. I needed to understand the full scope of what had been done to me. So I watched. I waited. And I collected more footage. Sunday night, they were together again. Tuesday night, again. A pattern. My work schedule had become their schedule. Every night I saved lives, they destroyed mine. Thursday morning came, and Vanessa texted me like she always did. Coffee at 10? I made banana bread. I stared at that text for a full minute, my hands shaking with rage. Part of me wanted to text back, I know what you're doing. I have it on video. But another part of me, the part that was slowly learning to be strategic instead of reactive, knew better. Can't today, I texted back. Ethan has a dentist appointment. Okay. Next week? Sure. I deleted the thread and felt sick. How many times had I sat in her kitchen, drinking her coffee, eating her baked goods, confiding my marriage problems while she was actively sleeping with my husband? How many times had she looked me in the eye and lied? The cruelty of it was staggering. This wasn't just an affair. This was calculated, intimate betrayal by two people I trusted most. That afternoon, while Ethan was at camp and Brandon was at work, I did something I'm not proud of but don't regret. I went into Brandon's home office, the spare bedroom he'd converted into his workspace during COVID. He usually kept it locked when he wasn't home, but I'd found the key months ago, hidden in his gym bag. I'd never used it before. I'd never had a reason to. Now I did. The office was neat, organized, very Brandon. Desk with dual monitors, filing cabinet, bookshelf full of marketing books he'd never read. I started with the filing cabinet. Tax returns, insurance documents, old pay stubs. Nothing interesting. Then I tried his desk drawers. Pens, sticky notes, business cards. The bottom drawer was locked. A locked drawer inside a locked room. My heart started pounding. I found a letter opener and jimmied the lock. Easier than I expected. The cheap desk wasn't built for real security. Inside the drawer, a different phone. Not his iPhone that I knew about. A Samsung Galaxy. Cheap, probably a burner. I turned it on. No password. That's how confident he was that I'd never find it. The phone lit up with messages. Dozens of them. All from a contact saved as V. Vanessa. I started reading, and my hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. The messages went back 6 months. 6 months. This wasn't a recent mistake or a moment of weakness. This was a sustained, deliberate relationship. Can't wait for Sunday. She works till 7 a.m., so we have all night. Did you see her this morning? She has no idea. It's actually funny. Your bed is more comfortable than mine. Mark never notices when I'm gone anyway. I kept scrolling, reading message after message. They talked about me, about how oblivious I was, how tired I always looked, how I'd gained weight after Ethan. Vanessa sent photos, lingerie photos, explicit photos, with captions like, for Sunday night, and something to think about at work. Brandon responded with heart emojis, fire emojis, eggplant emojis like a teenager. There were messages about Ethan, too. He almost walked in on us last week. Had to tell him we were wrapping your birthday present. My birthday present. They'd used my son, my innocent 7-year-old, as a cover story for their affair. I read one message from Brandon that made me want to vomit. Sometimes I wish she'd pick up more shifts. Gives us more time. He wished I'd work more, so he could have more time with her. In our house. In our bed. But the messages that destroyed me weren't the explicit ones, or even the cruel ones. They were the ordinary ones. The ones that showed this wasn't just sex. Good morning, beautiful. Thinking about you. Can't stop smiling today. You make me so happy. The same things he used to say to me, years ago, before Ethan, before night shifts, before I became just the tired nurse who paid half the mortgage. He was having a whole relationship with her, an emotional affair wrapped around the physical one. They had inside jokes, pet names, plans. There was a message from 3 weeks ago. We should tell them. Leave our spouses. We could get a place together. Brandon's response, not yet. Let's wait until after summer. Make sure the timing is right. I put the phone down on his desk and backed away from it like it was a snake. They were planning to leave. Brandon and Vanessa were planning to blow up both families, and they were just waiting for the right timing. What was the right timing? After they'd humiliated us a little more? After they'd squeezed every last bit of fun out of sneaking around? I looked around Brandon's office, his space, his sanctuary, his locked room full of lies, and I finally understood. I wasn't his wife anymore. I was his convenience. I was the woman who paid bills and raised his kid and worked night shifts so he could have freedom. I was the placeholder until he was ready to leave, and he'd been getting ready for 6 months. I took photos of everything. Every message, every photo, every sick, twisted conversation. I documented it all on my phone. Then I put his burner phone back exactly where I found it, locked the drawer, locked the office, and went downstairs. I sat on the couch in our living room, the couch we'd picked out together at Ashley Furniture, the couch where we'd watched movies and fallen asleep together, the couch where Ethan learned to walk by pulling himself up on the armrest, and I felt something shift inside me. The grief, the shock, the betrayal, all of it hardened into something else, something cold and sharp. Rage. Not the hot, explosive kind, the calculating kind, the kind that makes plans. That night at dinner, I asked Brandon about his day. He told me about a meeting, a difficult client, office politics. He was animated, engaged, present. Then he asked about mine. I told him about a patient, about Ethan's camp activities, about needing to schedule Ethan's back-to-school checkup. We sounded like a married couple. We looked like a married couple. But I watched him across the table, this man I'd loved for 12 years, and I saw him differently now. I saw how easily he lied, how smoothly he transitioned from texting his mistress about leaving me to asking me about my day, how effortlessly he lived in 2 worlds. And I realized I'd been living with a stranger. The man I married, the man I thought was Ethan's father, my partner, that man might never have existed. After dinner, Brandon went upstairs to shower. I heard the water running. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. Next Thursday, I miss our coffee talks. I looked at that text and felt my jaw clench. She missed our coffee talks. The audacity. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of this woman. But then I thought about those messages on Brandon's phone. She has no idea. It's actually funny. They thought I was stupid. They thought I was oblivious. They thought they were smarter than me, more careful, untouchable. And maybe that was my advantage. Maybe their arrogance would be their downfall. I texted back, "Yes, can't wait. I've missed you too." I sent it. Then I smiled. Not a happy smile. A dangerous one. I started planning. Really planning. Not just confronting them or exposing them. That was too small, too immediate. I wanted justice. I wanted consequences. I wanted everyone to know what they'd done. And I had an idea. A terrible, perfect idea. The 4th of July was 3 weeks away. Every year, Brandon and I hosted a neighborhood barbecue in our backyard. 40 to 50 people. Neighbors, friends, family, co-workers. It was our tradition. Started the first summer we bought the house. We'd grill burgers and brisket, set up lawn games, have a projector and screen for the kids to watch movies after dark. Everyone came, including Vanessa and her family, including my parents, including Brandon's parents. Everyone who mattered to us would be there, in our backyard, watching fireworks. What if they watched something else instead? The plans started forming in my mind, piece by piece. I'd save all the footage. I'd compile the best or worst moments. I'd wait until the party, until everyone was gathered, until the moment just before the movie was supposed to start on the projector. And then I'd play a different kind of show. I'd show every single person in our lives exactly what Brandon and Vanessa had been doing. No private confrontation, no quiet divorce, no chance for them to control the narrative or paint me as crazy or jealous. I'd give them the public exposure they deserved. The idea terrified me. It also thrilled me. It felt proportional to the crime. They'd humiliated me in secret for 6 months. I'd humiliate them publicly for the rest of their lives. But first, I had to survive 3 more weeks. 3 more weeks of pretending everything was fine. 3 more weeks of sleeping next to a man who wished I'd work more hours so he could see his girlfriend. 3 more weeks of waving at Vanessa across the driveway while she texted my husband about their next encounter. 3 more weeks of protecting Ethan from knowing his father was a liar and his mother was planning nuclear revenge. I didn't know if I could do it. I didn't know if I was strong enough. But as I lay in bed that night, listening to Brandon's breathing beside me, I made myself a promise. I would not break before the 4th of July. I would not give them the satisfaction of knowing I knew. I would smile and wave and play the oblivious wife. And when the moment came, I would destroy them both. The next morning, Friday, I went to work like normal. But during my lunch break, I sat in my car and cried for the first time since finding the phone. Not sad crying, angry crying, grieving crying. I was mourning my marriage, my friendship, my belief that people who loved you wouldn't destroy you. I was mourning the version of myself who'd been naive enough to trust. And I was mourning the future I'd thought we'd have. Growing old with Brandon, watching Ethan graduate, becoming grandparents someday. All of it was gone now, replaced by lawyers and custody agreements and divided holidays. After I finished crying, I dried my face, reapplied my concealer, and went back inside. My colleague Maria saw me in the break room. "You sure you're okay, Jess?" she asked. "You've seemed off for weeks." I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to scream it. Instead, I said, "Just tired. You know how it is." She nodded sympathetically and squeezed my shoulder. If only she knew. That weekend, Vanessa came over with her kids for a play date. I opened the door and saw her standing there with her perfect blonde hair and her yoga pants and her smile, and I wanted to slam the door in her face. Instead, I hugged her. "I've missed you this week," she said. "I know, things have been crazy," I said, ushering her inside. We sat in my kitchen while the kids played in the backyard. She drank the coffee I made her, she ate the cookies I'd bought, and she told me about her week, her husband's latest business trip, her daughter's upcoming birthday party. "You and Brandon should come," she said. "It'll be fun." I smiled. "We'd love to." I watched her sit in my kitchen, eating my food, planning future hangouts, and all I could think was, "You have no idea what's coming. You think you're safe. You think you're smart. You have 3 weeks left to enjoy this lie, and then the whole world is going to know what you are." After she left, I went upstairs to check on Ethan. He was building a Lego set in his room, completely absorbed. I sat down next to him. "Hey, buddy, can I ask you something?" He looked up. "Sure, Mommy. That lady you told me about, the one Daddy brings over, do you know her?" Ethan nodded slowly. "It's Miss Vanessa, from next door." Hearing him say it out loud made it real in a new way. "Does Daddy know you told me?" Ethan shook his head. "I didn't tell him. You said I could tell you anything." "That's right, baby. You did the right thing." I hugged him close. This beautiful boy who'd tried to protect me the only way he knew how. "I love you so much, Ethan." "I love you too, Mommy." "Is the surprise over now?" God, he still thought it was a surprise. "Yeah, sweetheart. The surprise is almost over." That night, after Ethan was asleep, I checked the nanny cam footage again. I don't know why. Maybe I was punishing myself. Maybe I needed to stay angry to follow through with my plan. But what I saw on that Friday night footage changed everything. Because it wasn't just Brandon and Vanessa on screen. There was someone else in the room with them. And when I saw who it was, I realized this betrayal was so much deeper than I ever imagined. I stared at the screen, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. It wasn't just Brandon and Vanessa in my bedroom. There was a third person. Mark, Vanessa's husband. The man who supposedly traveled constantly for work, who supposedly had no idea his wife was having an affair. He was there, in my house, sitting in the chair in the corner of our bedroom, watching, just watching, with a drink in his hand like he was at a show. I watched the timestamp. This was from last Tuesday, a night I'd worked. Brandon and Vanessa were on the bed, and Mark was calmly observing, occasionally sipping what looked like whiskey. At one point, Brandon looked over at him and they exchanged words I couldn't hear. Mark raised his glass in a toast. They were all in on it. All three of them. This wasn't an affair. This was something darker, more twisted, more calculated than I'd imagined. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. Everything I'd eaten that day came up, along with what felt like every assumption I'd ever made about my life. When there was nothing left, I sat on the cold tile floor, shaking. They were swingers. Or Mark was into watching his wife, or they had some sick arrangement where they all got off on deceiving me. I didn't know which, and it didn't matter. What mattered was that three people I'd trusted, 3 people I'd invited into my life, had conspired to use me, use my home, use my work schedule, use my son, for their entertainment. I felt violated in a way that went beyond infidelity. This was predatory. They'd hunted me without me even knowing I was prey. I went back to Brandon's office. I didn't care about being careful anymore. I took out the burner phone and scrolled back further in the messages. There it was, buried in texts from 4 months ago. Vanessa to Brandon. Mark suggested we use your place next time. More privacy than ours. Plus, it adds to the thrill, don't you think? Brandon's response. Jessica works every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday night. We have the whole house. Vanessa. Perfect. Mark wants to watch this time. You good with that? Brandon. Whatever makes it more interesting. I'm bored anyway. He was bored. In our marriage. With our life. With me. So he'd invited our neighbors to turn our bedroom into their personal sex club. And I'd been paying half the mortgage for the privilege of being humiliated. I found more messages. Plans. Logistics. Jokes at my expense. Mark had apparently suggested they record some of their encounters. Brandon agreed. There were videos somewhere. Videos I hadn't found yet. Videos of my husband with another woman in my bed, recorded by her husband, probably shared with God knows who. The violation kept expanding, getting worse with every new piece of information. I sat in that office until 3 a.m., reading through months of messages, learning that my entire life had been a lie. They'd started this arrangement right after Vanessa moved in last year. They'd all been laughing at me for 12 months. 12 months of Thursday morning coffees where Vanessa pretended to be my friend while planning when to next sleep with my husband. When Brandon came home from his late night at the office around 4 a.m., another lie I'd believed, I was sitting in our dark living room. Jess? He said, startled. Why are you up? I looked at him. Really looked at him. This stranger wearing my husband's face. Couldn't sleep, I said. My voice sounded hollow, unfamiliar. You okay? He asked, with what might have been genuine concern or might have been annoyance that I was awake when I wasn't supposed to be. Fine, I lied, just thinking. He came over and kissed the top of my head. I felt nothing. No love, no anger, nothing. Just a vast emptiness where my feelings used to be. Come to bed, he said. You need rest. I followed him upstairs to the bed where he'd been with Vanessa and Mark hours earlier. I lay down on sheets I'd washed, in a room I'd cleaned, in a house I'd helped pay for, and I felt myself starting to disappear. The next week was the worst of my entire life. I stopped eating. I'd lost 8 pounds by the time I stepped on the scale. Weight I couldn't afford to lose. I stopped sleeping more than 2 or 3 hours a night. I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through every memory, recontextualizing everything. Every time Brandon had been working late. Every time Vanessa had asked about my schedule. Every time Mark had been traveling. All of it had been coordinated deception. I started making mistakes at work. Real, dangerous mistakes. I almost gave a patient the wrong blood type for a transfusion. Maria caught it and pulled me aside. Jessica, what is going on with you? You need to take a leave of absence. You're going to kill someone. She was right, but I couldn't stop. If I stopped working, if I stayed home, I'd fall apart completely. Ethan started asking if I was sick. Mommy, why don't you eat dinner anymore? I'd stare at the plate of food I'd prepared. Grilled chicken, vegetables, the healthy, balanced meals I'd always prided myself on making, and feel nothing. No hunger, no appetite, no desire to put anything in my body. I'm fine, baby. Just not very hungry. But I wasn't fine. I was disappearing. I'd look in the mirror and barely recognize myself. Dark circles under my eyes, hollow cheeks, hair that I hadn't washed in 3 days because showering required energy I didn't have. I looked like a ghost. I felt like one, too. Brandon noticed but didn't seem concerned. You should see a doctor, he said once, absently, while scrolling through his phone, probably texting Vanessa. I wondered if they talked about how sick I looked, if they laughed about it. Thursday came, and Vanessa texted about our coffee date. I'd agreed to it last week, back when I still thought I could hold it together. Now I wasn't sure, but I went anyway, because the alternative was staying home and staring at walls. I walked next door to her house, a house I'd been in dozens of times, a house that now felt contaminated. Vanessa opened the door with her bright smile. You look exhausted, she said, concern in her voice. Fake concern. Performance concern. Are you feeling okay? Just tired, I said. We sat in her kitchen. She poured coffee. The smell made me nauseous, but I drank it anyway. She talked about her kids, about Mark's upcoming trip to Seattle, about a new recipe she wanted to try. And I sat there thinking, you're a monster. You're sitting here pretending to care about me while you're sleeping with my husband in my bed while your husband watches. How do you do it? How do you look me in the eye? Jess? Vanessa said. Are you listening? I realized I'd zoned out completely. Sorry, what? I asked if you're excited about the 4th of July party. It's only 2 weeks away now. 2 weeks. 14 days until I destroyed all of them. Yeah, I said. I'm excited. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her touch made my skin crawl. I'm worried about you, she said. You seem really off lately. Is everything okay with you and Brandon? The audacity. The sheer fucking audacity of her asking me about my marriage. We're fine, I said, pulling my hand away. Just busy with work. She nodded sympathetically. Marriage is hard. Mark and I have been struggling too, but we're working through it. Working through it. Was that what they called their twisted arrangement? I stood up abruptly. I should go. I have to pick up Ethan. Already? You just got here. Yeah, I just remembered he has a thing. I left before she could respond. I made it to my car before I started shaking. Not crying. Just shaking uncontrollably, like my body was trying to physically reject everything I'd just experienced. I sat in my driveway, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe. I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't pretend. I couldn't smile and have coffee and act normal. I was breaking. Really breaking. Not in the dramatic way you see in movies, in the quiet, terrifying way where you just stop functioning, where getting out of bed feels impossible, where every interaction requires so much energy that you have nothing left. I sat in that car and thought about how easy it would be to just drive. Drive to the highway. Drive fast. Drive into a concrete barrier at 70 miles per hour. Make it all stop. Make the pain stop. Make the humiliation stop. Make the knowledge stop. My phone rang. Ethan's summer camp. Ms. Morgan, Ethan's asking for you. He says his stomach hurts. My son. My beautiful, innocent son who'd been caught in the middle of this nightmare. I started the car and drove to pick him up. When I got there, Ethan ran to me and threw his arms around my waist. Mommy, I don't feel good. I knelt down and hugged him tight. It's okay, baby. Let's go home. In the car, he said quietly, Mommy, is Daddy's friend going to move in with us? My heart stopped. What? Why would you think that? I heard Daddy talking on the phone. He said something about a new place. They were really planning to leave. Brandon was really planning to leave me for Vanessa, and Ethan had heard him discussing it. That night, after Ethan was asleep, I stood in our bathroom with a bottle of sleeping pills. My prescription, 30 tablets, refilled last week. I poured them into my hand. It would be so easy. Take them all. Lie down. Fall asleep and not wake up. No more pain. No more betrayal. No more having to face what my life had become. I stood there for what felt like hours but was probably minutes. The pills felt heavy in my palm. Final. And then I heard a small voice from the doorway. Mommy? Ethan. Standing there in his dinosaur pajamas, rubbing his eyes. Are you sick? I looked at my son. 7 years old. He'd already lost the father he thought he had. He couldn't lose me too. I put the pills back in the bottle, screwed the cap on tight, and knelt down. No, baby. I'm okay. Just couldn't sleep. Can I sleep in your bed? Of course. I carried him to bed, and he curled up against me. As I lay there with my son sleeping peacefully beside me, I realized something. I couldn't die. Not yet. Because if I died, they won. Brandon, Vanessa, Mark, they'd get to move on with their lives while I was just another casualty of their selfishness. Ethan would grow up thinking his mother was too weak to fight. And I wasn't weak. I was hurt and broken and barely holding on. But I wasn't done yet. The next morning, I called my mother. I hadn't told her anything up to this point. I'd been too ashamed, too destroyed, too afraid of making it real by saying it out loud. But I needed help. Mom? My voice cracked. Honey? What's wrong? And I told her everything. The affair, the videos, Mark being involved, the messages, the 6 months of lies. I told her about the sleeping pills, about feeling like I was disappearing. I told her I didn't know how to survive this. My mother listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Pack a bag for you and Ethan. I'm coming to get you. You're staying with me until the 4th of July, and then we're going to make sure everyone knows what they did to you. I packed that afternoon while Brandon was at work. Clothes for me and Ethan, toiletries, Ethan's favorite toys. I left a note on the kitchen counter. Taking Ethan to my mom's for a few days. Need some space. Back before the party. I didn't explain. I didn't justify. I just left. My mother picked us up, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. At her house, she made me eat. She made me shower. She sat with me while I cried. She held me while I told her every horrible detail. "You're going to survive this," she said, "and you're going to make sure your son sees that strength wins. Not cruelty, not lies. Strength." I wanted to believe her. But as I lay in my childhood bedroom that night, with Ethan sleeping beside me, I realized that surviving this meant facing the most terrifying moment of my life, standing in front of everyone I knew and exposing the truth. And I wasn't sure I was strong enough to do it. Now, I woke up at my mother's house on a Tuesday morning, and for the first time in weeks, I'd slept more than 4 hours. Ethan was still curled up next to me, breathing softly, his small hand clutching my shirt like he was afraid I'd disappear. I lay there watching him sleep, and something shifted inside me. It wasn't a dramatic moment. There was no sudden clarity or burst of strength. It was quieter than that, simpler. I looked at my son and thought, he's watching. He's learning what to do when life breaks you. And right now, I'm teaching him to hide, to run, to let bad people win. That realization didn't make me feel strong. It made me feel responsible. And responsibility, I was learning, could be more powerful than strength. I couldn't control what Brandon had done to me, but I could control what Ethan learned from how I responded. My mother knocked softly and came in with coffee. She'd been a warrior these past few days, feeding me, forcing me to shower, letting me cry without trying to fix it. She sat on the edge of the bed. "Brandon's been texting," she said quietly. "Asking when you're coming home, says he's worried." I took the coffee, my hands finally steady. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. Your phone, your choice." I picked up my phone from the nightstand. 7 missed calls from Brandon, 12 texts ranging from, "Where are you?" to, "This is ridiculous, Jess. Come home," to, "You're being dramatic. We need to talk." Dramatic. I was being dramatic. The man who'd been running a sex club in our bedroom thought I was being dramatic for needing space. I showed my mother the texts. She read them and her jaw tightened. "When you expose him at that party, I want to be there, front row." That afternoon, while Ethan played in my mom's backyard, I made a decision. I called my best friend from nursing school, Rachel, who'd moved to Houston after graduation, but we'd stayed close. I told her everything, every detail, the affair, Mark watching, the messages, my plan for the 4th of July party. Rachel listened, and when I finished, she said, "I'm coming. Me and David both. You need people in your corner. Rachel, you don't have to." "Shut up. We're coming. What else do you need?" I felt something warm in my chest. Not quite hope, but maybe the beginning of it. "A lawyer," I said. "A really good divorce lawyer. I know someone. Sending you her number right now." Within an hour, I had an appointment scheduled for Thursday morning with Patricia Chen, a divorce attorney in Austin known for being ruthless and expensive. I didn't care about the cost anymore. Thursday morning, my mother watched Ethan while I drove to Patricia Chen's office in downtown Austin. Her office was on the 10th floor of a glass building with a view of the Capitol. She was mid-50s, immaculately dressed, with eyes that missed nothing. I sat across from her massive desk and told her my story. She took notes on her laptop, her expression neutral. When I finished, she leaned back. "Do you have evidence?" I pulled out my phone and showed her. The nanny cam videos, screenshots of the messages from Brandon's burner phone, photos of Mark being in my bedroom, everything. Patricia watched some of the footage, read through the messages, and nodded. "This is good. Very good. Texas is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery can affect property division and custody. With this evidence, you'll get primary custody of your son, the house, and a significant portion of marital assets." "What about exposing them publicly?" I asked. "At the party. Is that legal?" Patricia looked at me carefully. "Legally? You own that footage. It was taken in your home without their knowledge, which in Texas is legal since you're recording on your own property. You can show it to whoever you want. But Jessica, I need you to think about this carefully. Public humiliation might feel satisfying in the moment, but it could complicate custody negotiations. Courts don't love drama." "He used my son to hide his affair," I said, my voice hard. "He told Ethan it was a surprise for me. He made my 7-year-old lie. I don't care about drama. I care about consequences." Patricia nodded slowly. "Then make sure you're prepared for the fallout. Once you do this, there's no going back. Your divorce will be public, ugly. Everyone will have an opinion." "They already destroyed my life in private," I said. "I'm just returning the favor in public." I left Patricia's office with a plan. She'd have divorce papers drawn up, ready to be served immediately after the party. She'd file for an emergency custody order citing the use of our child to facilitate the affair. She'd go after everything: the house, Brandon's retirement accounts, spousal support. Take him for everything he's worth, I told her. I want him to feel what it's like to lose everything. Patricia smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. That's what I do best. I walked out of that building feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not happiness, not peace, but purpose. I had a direction now, a plan. And plans, I was learning, could keep you alive when hope couldn't. Back at my mother's house, I started preparing. I took the nanny cam footage and edited it down to the most damning parts. Brandon and Vanessa together, Mark watching, the timestamps showing this had happened multiple times on my work nights. I created a compilation video about 3 minutes long, set to play automatically. No music, no commentary. Just the raw footage with dates and times. I practiced what I'd say when I played it. Kept it simple, factual, not hysterical or angry. Just, before we start the movie tonight, I want to share something with all of you. For the past 6 months, while I've been working night shifts at the hospital, this is what's been happening in my home. Short, direct, devastating. My mother helped me rehearse. Don't cry, she advised. Don't give them your tears. Give them your strength. The days before the party crawled by. Brandon kept calling, kept texting. I finally responded. Coming home Monday. Need some time with Mom. See you at the party. He seemed satisfied with that. Probably relieved I was being reasonable. I wondered if he'd told Vanessa I'd left. I wondered if they were worried or if they thought they'd gotten away with it. I hoped they felt safe. I hoped they were planning to come to the party relaxed and confident. The fall would be so much more satisfying that way. I spent those days with Ethan, really present with him for the first time in weeks. We went to the park. We got ice cream. We built Lego sets. And I didn't cry in front of him once. I was done crying. Monday came. July 2nd. 2 days before the party. I drove back to Austin, back to my house. Brandon's car was in the driveway. I sat in my car for a moment, gathering myself. Then Ethan and I went inside. Brandon was in the kitchen, and when he saw us, he actually looked relieved. Jess, hey, I was getting worried. He hugged me. I stood stiff in his arms. I needed some space, I said. My mom helped. Are we okay? He asked, searching my face. I looked at him and almost laughed at the question. Were we okay? This man who'd betrayed me in every possible way wanted to know if we were okay. We're fine, I said. Just stressed. Work, Ethan, everything. I'm sorry I left without more explanation. I watched him relax. He believed me. He actually believed I was fine. The party's still on for the 4th, right? He asked. Of course, I said, smiling. Wouldn't miss it. Tuesday and Wednesday passed in a blur of party preparations. I bought food, cleaned the house, set up the backyard. Brandon helped, chatting about which neighbors were coming, which family members had confirmed. He was excited. He loved hosting this party every year. He loved being the center of attention, the guy with the big backyard and the good grill. This is going to be great, he said Wednesday night while we set up string lights. Best one yet. Yeah, I agreed. It's going to be unforgettable. He had no idea how right I was. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from anxiety or fear, from anticipation. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, everyone would know. Tomorrow, Brandon Morgan and Vanessa would face consequences. I lay in bed next to my husband for the last time, and I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Thursday morning, 4th of July. I woke up early and got to work. I marinated the meat, prepared side dishes, set up tables and chairs in the backyard. Brandon was in a great mood, blasting country music, singing along. At one point, he came up behind me and hugged me while I was cutting vegetables. I love you, he said. I turned around and looked at him. Really looked at him. I know you do, I said. And the sad part was, I think he believed that. I think he genuinely believed he loved me while simultaneously betraying me. That's what made him dangerous. He'd convinced himself his actions didn't contradict his feelings. People started arriving around 3. My parents came early. Rachel and her husband David drove up from Houston. Brandon's parents arrived with his sister. Neighbors trickled in, including Vanessa, Mark, and their kids. I watched Vanessa walk into my backyard, wearing a red sundress, her hair perfect, her smile bright. She hugged me. Happy 4th! This is going to be so fun! It really is, I said. By 5 o'clock, the backyard was full. 47 people by my count, everyone who mattered to Brandon and me. His coworkers, my nursing friends, neighbors, family. Kids were running around playing cornhole and tag. Adults were drinking beer, eating brisket, laughing. It was perfect. A perfect Texas 4th of July party. Brandon was at the grill, holding court, telling stories. Vanessa was near the drinks table with Mark, both of them relaxed and happy. I circulated, chatted, smiled. At one point, my mother squeezed my hand. "You ready?" she whispered. I nodded. 10 minutes. At 6:30, the sun was starting to set. It was almost time for the kids' movie on the projector. Brandon announced it. "All right, everyone, movie's about to start. Kids, get comfortable on the grass. Adults, grab a drink and settle in." People started moving toward the screen. This was it. I walked to the projector. My hands were steady. My voice was steady. Everything about me was steady because I'd spent weeks preparing for this moment. "Actually," I said loudly, getting everyone's attention, "before we start the movie, there's something I need to share with all of you." The backyard went quiet. Everyone turned to look at me. Brandon looked confused. Vanessa looked curious. Mark looked vaguely annoyed. Perfect. "For the past 6 months," I said, my voice carrying across the yard, "while I've been working night shifts at St. David's Hospital, saving lives in the emergency room, something's been happening here, in my home, in my bedroom. I found out 3 weeks ago, and I've been gathering evidence since then. I think you all deserve to see what I discovered." I pressed play. The projector screen lit up, and there, in crystal clear footage, was my husband in our bedroom with our neighbor. The backyard erupted. The backyard exploded into chaos. Screams, gasps. Someone's drink hit the ground and shattered. The video played on the massive projector screen. Brandon and Vanessa in my bed. The timestamp clear in the corner. June 15th, 9:47 p.m. A night I'd been at the hospital. The footage was undeniable, explicit, devastating. I stood there calmly while my entire world watched my marriage disintegrate in high definition. Brandon's face went white. He started toward me, shouting, "Jessica, what the fuck?" But my father stepped between us. "Don't you dare," Dad said, his voice low and dangerous. Brandon stopped. He looked around at the crowd, his parents, his coworkers, our neighbors, all staring at him with horror and disgust. His mother was crying. His father looked like he wanted to hit him. The video kept playing. Now it showed a different night. Same bedroom, same people. But this time, there was a third figure visible in the corner. Mark, sitting in the chair, watching. Vanessa made a sound like a wounded animal. She tried to run toward the house, but Rachel blocked her path. "You're not going anywhere," Rachel said. Mark somehow looked more annoyed than ashamed. "This is a violation of privacy," he said, his voice sharp. I turned to him, and I laughed. Actually laughed. "Privacy? You're concerned about privacy? You were in my bedroom, in my house, watching my husband fuck your wife, and you're talking to me about privacy?" The crowd shifted. Murmurs became shouts. Brandon's sister yelled, "Brandon, what the hell is wrong with you?" One of our neighbors, an older man named Tom who lived 3 doors down, looked at Vanessa and Mark with disgust. "We have to live next to you people?" The video ended. The screen went black. The backyard was silent except for crying children and shocked whispers. I stood in front of the projector, and I spoke into that silence. "My name is Jessica Morgan. I've been married to Brandon for 11 years. We have a 7-year-old son named Ethan, who's inside right now, thank God, because he doesn't need to see this. 3 weeks ago, my son whispered something to me. He said, 'Mommy, Daddy brings a lady home when you work at the hospital.' That lady was Vanessa, our neighbor, my friend, the woman I trusted with my struggles, my fears, my marriage problems. She wasn't just sleeping with my husband. She was studying me, learning my weaknesses, and her husband, Mark, was part of it. They turned my home, the home I pay for with my nursing salary, into their personal entertainment. My voice didn't shake. I'd practiced this. I was ready. I installed that camera to protect my son and document what was happening. Everything you just saw happened while I was working 12-hour shifts saving lives. They used my schedule. They used my trust. They used my child. Brandon tried to speak. "Jess, please, let me explain." "Explain?" I turned to him. "Explain what, Brandon? Explain the 6 months of lies? Explain the burner phone I found with thousands of messages? Explain how you told our son that Vanessa was a surprise for me? Explain how you wished I'd work more shifts so you could have more time with her?" I pulled out my phone and held it up. I have everything, every message, every video, every sick conversation about how oblivious I was, how you were just waiting for the right time to leave me, how you were bored. Brandon's face crumbled. His father stood up and walked away, shaking his head. His mother was sobbing into her hands. Vanessa's kids were crying, confused. Mark tried one more time. This is defamation. We'll sue. Patricia Chen stepped forward from the crowd. I'd invited her as a guest. Actually, I'm Mrs. Morgan's attorney. Everything you just saw was recorded legally in her home. There's no defamation when it's the truth, but please do try to sue. It'll make the discovery phase very entertaining. The party dissolved after that. People left quickly, avoiding eye contact with Brandon, Vanessa, and Mark. Some neighbors stopped to hug me, to whisper support. We had no idea. You're so brave. He doesn't deserve you. My mother stayed close, her hand on my shoulder, grounding me. Rachel and David stayed too, helping clean up in silence. Within an hour, the backyard was nearly empty. Just family and close friends remained. Brandon stood alone by the grill. His world collapsed around him. He looked at me across the yard, and I saw something in his eyes. Maybe regret, maybe just panic. He started walking toward me. Jess, we need to talk. Privately. No, I said. We're done talking privately. You're being served divorce papers tomorrow morning. Patricia is filing for primary custody of Ethan. I get the house. You get out. You can't just, he started. I can, I interrupted. And I am. You used our son to hide your affair. You violated our home. You humiliated me for 6 months. And you did it all while I was working to support our family. A judge is going to love hearing about that. Brandon looked desperate now. Where am I supposed to go? I felt nothing for him. No pity, no sympathy, no residual love. Go to Vanessa's. Oh wait, her husband's there. And I'm guessing he's not thrilled with either of you right now. I turned my back on him and walked into my house. My mother followed. Rachel followed. My father stayed outside to make sure Brandon left without causing problems. Inside, I checked on Ethan. He was in his room, headphones on, playing on his iPad, completely unaware his father's life had just imploded. I was grateful I'd kept him inside. He didn't need to see that. Not yet. Someday I'd have to explain it all. But not today. That night, Brandon left. He packed a bag and left without saying goodbye to Ethan. That told me everything I needed to know about who he really was. The next morning, a process server showed up at whatever hotel Brandon had checked into and delivered the divorce papers. By noon, it was all over social media. Someone at the party had recorded parts of my speech and the video on their phone. It went viral in our community. My phone exploded with messages, support, questions, interview requests from local news. I ignored all of it except the supportive ones. My nursing friends rallied around me. My neighbors, the ones who weren't friends with Vanessa, brought food, offered help. The community turned on Brandon and Vanessa. There's something about using a child to hide an affair that people can't forgive. Even people who might have been sympathetic to marriage problems drew the line at weaponizing a 7-year-old. Vanessa and Mark put their house up for sale within a week. They couldn't handle the stares, the whispers, the judgment. Their kids stopped going to the neighborhood pool. Mark's company quietly let him go. Not officially because of the scandal, but we all knew. Brandon got demoted at work. Not fired, but moved to a different department, away from client-facing roles. His reputation was destroyed. His parents stopped speaking to him. His sister sent me a long apology text about how she'd always known he was selfish, but never thought he'd go this far. I didn't respond. I was done managing other people's feelings about Brandon's choices. That was his mess to clean up, not mine. I had enough to deal with, like explaining to Ethan why Daddy didn't live with us anymore, why we weren't going to Vanessa's house for playdates, why everything had changed overnight. I sat Ethan down one morning about a week after the party. We were in his room, surrounded by his toys and drawings, and I tried to find words that would be honest but age-appropriate. Ethan, you know how Daddy has been staying somewhere else? He nodded, his eyes wide and worried. Is it because of what I told you? About the lady? My heart broke. Oh, baby, no, this is not your fault. Not even a little bit. You were brave to tell me. You did the right thing. What happened is because of choices Daddy made. Grown-up choices that hurt our family. Daddy and I are getting divorced. That means we won't be married anymore. But we both still love you so much. Ethan started crying. I don't want you to divorce. I want Daddy to come home. I held him while he cried, and I cried too. Not for Brandon, Not for my marriage, but for my son's innocence, for the family structure he was losing, for the complicated grief of a child watching his world change. The divorce proceedings moved fast. Patricia was ruthless and efficient. Brandon's lawyer tried to argue for 50-50 custody, but the evidence was overwhelming. The messages where Brandon discussed using Ethan as cover. The burner phone. The affair in the family home. The judge granted me primary custody, with Brandon getting supervised visitation every other weekend. I got the house. I got 70% of our assets, including his 401k. He was ordered to pay child support and spousal support. In Texas, adultery matters, and Brandon's adultery had been spectacularly documented. He signed everything without fighting. I think he knew he'd lost. Or maybe he was just too ashamed to show his face in court. Either way, by mid-August, I was divorced. Officially. Legally free of Brandon Morgan. It felt surreal. 11 years erased in 6 weeks of paperwork. But being legally divorced didn't mean I was emotionally recovered. The betrayal still hit me in waves. I'd be fine for days, functioning normally, and then I'd see something. Lavender soap at the grocery store, a couple holding hands, Ethan's drawing of his family, and I'd have to pull over and cry. I started therapy. Real therapy with a trauma specialist who understood betrayal and PTSD. You're grieving multiple losses, she told me. Your marriage, yes, but also your sense of safety, your ability to trust your judgment, your friend, your community as you knew it. That's complex grief. It takes time. I hated that word. Time. Everyone kept saying I needed time, but I wanted to be better now. I wanted to stop waking up at 3 a.m., replaying every moment I'd missed, every red flag I'd ignored, every time I'd believed his lies. September came. Ethan started 2nd grade. I reduced my hours at the hospital to be home more, to have a normal schedule. Money was tight, but we managed. The house felt empty without Brandon's presence, but also lighter, cleaner, like I'd aired out a room that had been holding toxic fumes. I painted the bedroom, threw out the old mattress and bought a new one, hung different curtains, slowly reclaimed the space as mine. Vanessa and Mark's house sold in October. I didn't watch them move, didn't say goodbye. They were just gone one day like they'd never existed. Good. I never wanted to see them again. The new neighbors who moved in, a young couple with a newborn, introduced themselves nervously. We heard about what happened. We just want you to know we're not like that. We're good people. I appreciated the gesture even though it was awkward. This was my life now, being the woman from that viral video, the neighborhood scandal. But something started shifting in November. Maybe it was the therapy. Maybe it was time, despite my resistance to that concept. Maybe it was watching Ethan adapt and thrive despite everything. He was doing well in school. He'd made new friends. He talked about his feelings in age-appropriate ways. I'm mad at Daddy sometimes, he told me once. That's okay, I said. I'm mad at him sometimes too. We were learning together how to navigate this new reality. And slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice, I started feeling something other than pain. Not happiness exactly, but possibility. Like maybe I could build a life that wasn't defined by what had been done to me. Maybe I could be Jessica Morgan, not that woman whose husband cheated with the neighbor. Maybe I could reclaim my own story. December brought the first real test. Brandon wanted to take Ethan for Christmas Eve, his scheduled visitation. Ethan didn't want to go. I want to stay with you, Mommy. Please. I called Brandon. He doesn't want to come. I'm not going to force him. Brandon's voice was strained. I'm his father. I have rights. You're his father, I agreed. So start acting like one. Earn his trust back. Don't demand it. We compromised. Brandon could come to my house Christmas morning for 2 hours to see Ethan open presents, supervised by me. It was awkward and painful, but we got through it. And watching Brandon try to connect with the son he'd betrayed, watching him realize what he'd lost, I felt something unexpected. Not forgiveness. I wasn't there yet. Might never be there. But release. Like I was finally letting go of the anger that had been keeping me stuck. He'd destroyed our family, but he hadn't destroyed me. And that was the difference between us. By the end of December, as I stood in my kitchen, in my house, with my son asleep upstairs, I looked back at the past 6 months and barely recognized the woman I'd been. The woman who'd sat on the bathroom floor with sleeping pills in her hand. The woman who'd thought she couldn't survive. I'd survived. More than that, I'd fought back. I'd protected my son. I'd refused to let them win. And now I was building something new. Something that was mine. not ours. Mine. It wasn't the life I'd planned. It wasn't the happy ending I'd dreamed of when I married Brandon at 28. But it was real. It was honest. And it was strong. I'd learned that strength doesn't mean not breaking. Strength means breaking completely and choosing to put yourself back together, even when the pieces don't fit the same way. Especially then. But I wasn't done yet. There was one final piece of my story left to write, and it was about to begin. Barshur, January 2026 arrived cold and clear. I stood in my backyard on New Year's Day, the same backyard where I'd exposed Brandon 6 months earlier, and I felt different. Not healed, healing isn't linear, and I still had hard days, but transformed. The woman who'd hosted that 4th of July party was gone. In her place was someone harder, wiser, more careful with trust, but also more certain of her own strength. I'd survived what I thought would kill me, and that knowledge changed everything. I wasn't the same Jessica who'd married Brandon. I wasn't even the same Jessica who'd installed that nanny cam. I was someone new, someone I was just beginning to know, and I was okay with that. More than okay. I was proud of her. Work became my anchor. I'd switched to day shifts permanently, and the hospital felt like a sanctuary. My colleagues knew what had happened. Everyone in Austin seemed to know, but they treated me normally, with respect, with compassion, but not pity. Maria pulled me aside one day in February. You know, when you first came back after everything, I was worried about you, thought you might not make it. But look at you now. You're stronger than ever. She was right. The distraction of work, the purpose of helping people, the routine of 12-hour shifts, it all helped me rebuild my sense of self. I was good at my job, really good, and that mattered when so much else felt uncertain. I got nominated for Nurse of the Month in March. It felt like the universe saying, "You're more than what happened to you." Ethan was thriving too, which surprised me. I'd been terrified the divorce would destroy him. Instead, he seemed lighter, happier. The tension that had lived in our house when Brandon was there, the tension I'd pretended not to notice, was gone. Ethan laughed more, played more freely. His teacher told me at parent conferences, "Whatever's happening at home, it's working." Ethan's more confident, more engaged. He's doing great. I'd been so worried about being a single mom, about failing him, about not being enough on my own. But maybe, I was realizing, I was enough. Maybe I'd always been enough. Brandon hadn't completed our family. He'd complicated it. His absence wasn't a loss. It was a simplification. Just me and Ethan figuring it out together. And we were doing okay. Brandon's visitations continued, every other weekend, still supervised per the court order. He'd show up on Saturday mornings, subdued and apologetic, and spend 4 hours with Ethan at the park or Chuck E. Cheese or wherever divorced dads take their kids to avoid meaningful conversation. Ethan went because the court said he had to, but his enthusiasm was minimal. "Do I have to go, Mom?" became a regular Saturday morning question. "Yes, baby. Daddy loves you. He made mistakes with me, but he's still your dad." I said it because it was the right thing to say, even when I didn't fully believe it. Even when I wanted to say, "Your father is a selfish coward who destroyed our family." But Ethan deserved the chance to have a relationship with Brandon, on his own terms, in his own time. That was his choice to make, not mine to impose. In April, I started dating again. Not seriously, just coffee dates arranged by well-meaning friends who thought I needed to get back out there. Most were disasters. Men who wanted to hear the story, who saw me as that woman from the video, who treated my trauma like entertainment. I stopped after 3 dates. I wasn't ready. Maybe I wouldn't be ready for a long time. And that was fine. I didn't need a man to complete me. I'd learned that lesson the hard way. What I needed was myself, my own company, my own peace. Romance could wait, or not come at all. Either way, I'd survive. I'd already survived so much worse than being alone. Loneliness, it turned out, was a gift after years of being lonely in a marriage. At least now my loneliness was honest. But something happened in May that changed things. I was at the grocery store, Sheb, on a Tuesday evening, when I ran into someone I hadn't seen since the divorce. Brandon's mother, Patricia Morgan. We locked eyes across the produce section, and I froze. She'd been at that 4th of July party. She'd seen everything. She'd watched her son's betrayal play out on a projector screen. I didn't know what to expect. Anger? Blame? Instead, she walked over to me, her eyes red, and said quietly, "Jessica, can we talk?" We sat in my car in the parking lot, groceries in the back seat, and she cried. I'm so sorry. For what he did to you. For the grandchild I barely see now because I raised a man who could do something so cruel. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see you. I see what you did to survive, and I'm proud of you. We talked for an hour. She told me about Brandon growing up, about signs she'd missed, about her own marriage to Brandon's father that had been troubled. I stayed, she said, even when I shouldn't have. I taught Brandon that marriage was about enduring, not about honoring. Maybe if I'd been braver, he would have learned better. I squeezed her hand. This isn't your fault. Brandon's choices are his own. Maybe, she said. But I'm sorry anyway. She asked about Ethan. I showed her photos. She cried again. Can I see him sometime? I miss my grandson. I thought about it. Yes, but on my terms. At my house. When Ethan's ready. She nodded gratefully. Thank you, Jessica. You're a better person than I deserve. She left and I sat in my car crying too. Not from pain this time. From release. From the unexpected grace of connection. From the realization that not everyone on Brandon's side of the family blamed me for exposing him. Summer came. Ethan finished second grade with excellent grades. We celebrated with a trip to South Padre Island, just the two of us. We built sandcastles and collected seashells and ate too much ice cream. One night, sitting on the beach watching the sunset, Ethan said, Mom, are you happy? I looked at my son, this beautiful boy who'd been forced to grow up too fast, who'd seen too much, who'd been used as a pawn in adult games. Yeah, baby, I am. Are you? He nodded. I like it being just us. Me too, I said. And I meant it. This wasn't the family I'd planned, but it was the family I had. And it was good. We were good. Broken and rebuilt, but good. That night, I posted on Instagram for the first time since the divorce. Just a photo of the sunset and a caption. Building something new. Piece by piece. The comments flooded in. Support, encouragement, stories from other women who'd survived betrayal. I'd become, without meaning to, a symbol. That scared me and empowered me in equal measure. By fall, I'd started speaking publicly about my experience. A local women's shelter asked me to share my story at a fundraiser. I almost said no. I didn't want to be defined by what Brandon did to me. But then I thought about the women in that shelter, fleeing abuse, rebuilding their lives, wondering if survival was possible. And I said yes. I stood on that stage in September and told my story. All of it. The affair, the humiliation, the nanny cam, the confrontation, the survival. I talked about the night I held sleeping pills and chose to live. I talked about the strength it takes to expose abuse when everyone's watching. I talked about rebuilding when you're so broken you can't remember who you used to be. And when I finished, the room was silent. Then someone stood up and clapped. Then another. Then everyone. Standing ovation. Women were crying. Afterward, dozens of women came up to me. You gave me courage. I'm leaving tomorrow because of you. Thank you for being brave. I drove home that night and realized, this is my purpose now. Not to be Brandon's ex-wife, but to be the woman who fought back and won. October brought an unexpected development. Vanessa reached out. An email, not a text. Subject line, I'm sorry. I almost deleted it without reading. But curiosity won. The email was long, rambling, full of excuses and justifications and attempts at explanation. She and Mark had divorced. She'd lost custody of her kids to Mark. She'd moved to Dallas to start over. She was in therapy. She was sorry. So sorry. She understood if I never forgave her, but she needed me to know she was sorry. I read it twice. Then I deleted it. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Her apology, her therapy, her life falling apart, none of it was my responsibility. I didn't need her apology to move forward. I'd already moved forward without it. Some betrayals are too deep for sorry to reach. This was one of them. I wished her well, in the abstract way you wish well for strangers. But she wasn't my problem anymore. She was just a person who used to be in my life who wasn't anymore. Brandon, meanwhile, had moved to San Antonio. New job, new city, fresh start. He saw Ethan once a month now, unsupervised finally as of November when the court order was modified. Ethan came back from visits quiet, distant. How was it? I'd ask. Fine, he'd say. Never more than that. I didn't push. He'd talk when he was ready, or he wouldn't. Either way, I'd be there. One day in December, Ethan said casually, Dad has a girlfriend. My heart skipped. Oh? How do you feel about that? Ethan shrugged. I don't care. She's nice, I guess. But she's not you. I'm not supposed to be me, baby. I'm your mom. She's just someone your dad is dating. Yeah, but... He paused, choosing words carefully. You're stronger than her, than him, than all of them. I hugged him. My wise, observant, incredible son. Thank you, baby. That means everything. Christmas 2026 was different from the last. Better. My parents came. Brandon's mother came, tentatively, gratefully. Rachel and David drove up from Houston. We had a small, quiet celebration. No drama, no pain, just people who loved each other, who'd survived hard things, who were choosing joy despite everything. I looked around my living room, my house, my tree, my people, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Contentment, not happiness exactly, something deeper, something earned. I'd fought for this peace, I'd bled for it, and now I had it. That night, after everyone left and Ethan was asleep, I sat alone with a glass of wine and reflected on the past 18 months. From discovery to devastation, to exposure to divorce to rebuilding. What a journey. What a terrible, necessary, transforming journey. And I'd survived it. Not just survived. Thrived. I was stronger. Wiser. More whole than I'd been even before Brandon. Because I'd been tested and hadn't broken. I'd bent. I'd cracked. But I'd held. New Year's Eve, I wrote a letter to myself. To the Jessica who'd sat on that bathroom floor with pills in her hand. To the Jessica who'd thought she couldn't survive. To the Jessica who'd been so broken she couldn't see past the next hour. I wrote, Dear Jessica, you made it. You're here. You're whole. Not the same as before. You'll never be that naive again, that trusting, that easy to break, but better, stronger, wiser. You learned that love without respect is worthless. That trust must be earned, that your worth isn't determined by someone else's ability to see it. You learned you're enough. Just you. Without a man, without a marriage, without the life you thought you needed, you're enough. And you taught Ethan what strength looks like. Real strength. Not the kind that never breaks. The kind that breaks and rebuilds. You did that. Be proud. I'm proud. We survived. Today, as I finish telling you this story, it's January 2027. 2.5 years since I discovered the affair. 2 years since the exposure. 18 months since the divorce was final. I'm 36 years old, single mom, ER nurse, survivor, advocate. I speak at women's shelters 3 times a year now. I've helped a dozen women plan their own exits from abusive relationships. I've become someone I never thought I'd be, someone who uses her pain to help others. My story isn't unique. Betrayal happens every day, but my response was mine. And maybe, if you're reading this, if you're living through something similar, maybe my story can help you too. Maybe you're sitting where I sat 2 years ago, wondering if you can survive this. Let me tell you, you can. It won't be easy. It won't be clean. It won't be the life you planned. But it will be real, and honest, and yours. And that's worth fighting for. So this is what I want you to know. Whoever you are, wherever you are in your own story of betrayal or abuse or heartbreak, you are not crazy. You are not overreacting. Your pain is real and valid. And you don't have to stay. You don't have to accept betrayal because of vows you made, or years you invested, or kids you share. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to demand better. You are allowed to expose the truth, even when people say you should handle it privately. Private betrayal doesn't deserve private consequences. Public humiliation is a choice abusers make when they risk their families for their pleasure. I didn't humiliate Brandon. He humiliated himself. I just held up a mirror. You're allowed to hold up mirrors too. You're allowed to fight back. You're allowed to be messy and angry and vengeful and strategic. You're allowed to survive any way you need to. And you're allowed to rebuild slowly, painfully, imperfectly. There's no right way to heal. There's only your way. If you're the person sitting on the bathroom floor right now, the one holding pills or considering giving up, I need you to hear this. Don't. Please don't. Not because things will magically get better tomorrow. They won't. Not because the pain will stop immediately. It won't. But because you deserve the chance to see who you become on the other side of this. You deserve to see your own strength. You deserve to build a life that's truly yours. You deserve to wake up one morning and realize you're not just surviving anymore. You're living. Really living. That morning will come. I promise you. It came for me. It came for the women I've helped. It will come for you. But you have to stay. You have to fight. Not for him, not for them, for you. For the person you'll become, for the life you'll build from these ashes. Stay, fight, survive, and then, when you're ready, help someone else do the same. That's how we heal, together. My name is Jessica Morgan. I was married for 11 years to a man who betrayed me with my neighbor while I saved lives at the hospital. He used our son to hide his affair. He thought I'd never find out. He was wrong. I exposed him publicly. I divorced him. I rebuilt my life from nothing. And if I can do it, if I can go from suicidal to strong, from destroyed to determined, from victim to victor, then so can you. The door is there. You just have to be brave enough to walk through it. I believe in you because someone believed in me, and that made all the difference. So here's my final message. You are not alone. You are not weak. You are not broken beyond repair. You are a survivor in the making, and your story isn't over yet. The best chapters are still ahead, I promise. Now go write them.